Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Laptop Cinema Club, the series where we bring you intimate conversations with the female creatives making the media you love. I'm Ebony Adams. I'm the manager of public programs here at Women in Film. And I am really excited to be talking tonight with the creative team behind the humorous and poignant, coming of age dramedy, The Never List. Joining us to talk tonight are director Michelle Mower, writer Ariadne Shaffer, and producer Anna Margarita Albelo. Welcome to all of you. Just a quick note, we will be taking your questions tonight, so feel free to drop them in the Q&A window at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any point during the conversation. I also do want to note that we have closed captioning available, so if you click the closed caption button at the bottom of your window, you should be able to get closed captions for this. So that's a lightning quick welcome and introduction. Normally I do like 10, 20 minutes at the top. No one is here to hear me talk, so I'm trying to, condense that stuff. So let's get right into it. And I want to start with you, Ariadne. Can you talk a little bit about, the story of The Never List? What prompted you to write it, and then how you found a home for it?
Okay, great. So the story is about a good girl, a teenager, and she's a great student. She's college bound. She's student government, and she has a best friend, and they've been best friends forever. But they have kind of alter egos, Vicky and Veronica, which are their kind of bad girl versions of themselves. And forever they've kept this thing called the Never List, which is all the stuff that they'd never do, but Vicky and Veronica totally would. And her best friend dies in a tragic accident, just completely random. And so our main character decides to do all the items on the most recent Never List in honor of her best friend, who never got a chance to do anything bad or against the rules. So that's the basic story of it. And actually, it's funny because I was just looking at my folder where I keep all the drafts of it and realized that the very, very, very first version of this was inspired by the song by Eartha Kitt, "I Want to Be Evil." Wow. I don't know if you know that song at all. Exactly. I love that song. And so the first one was called I Want to Be Evil script. And so then I was like, well, what would cause a good girl, a girl who's so good that the only place she's seen a bar is in ballet class from the song, to be bad. And so then I connected to the fact my husband lost his best friend at 13, and it sent him off the rails for a while. And it took him a while to come back to who he was. And so I kind of connected these two kind of things to come up with the story for The Never List.
I love that. I watch quite a bit of media that, maybe is aimed for people 25 years younger than I am, but enjoy it. But what I loved about The Never List is how honest it is about the ways in which young people, young girls, sort of construct like these inner lives for themselves, and then the ways in which they find to manifest those inner desires outwardly, but just in a really like sweet and honest and occasionally incredibly funny way. So Michelle, Ariadne, can you talk a bit about like how you see this film fitting into like the ecosystem of other teen movies, so whether it's, recent stuff like The Half of It or Lady Bird or Booksmart or, 80s classics, like where do you see it fitting in or not fitting in?
I think it's a hybrid of a lot of those sort of typical teen films. I mean, I certainly, I'm not going to age myself here, but I certainly grew up during what I like to call the golden age of teen films back in the 80s, and certainly was influenced by John Hughes films, specifically, but other filmmakers who were making films targeted to my demographic at the time. And certainly those influenced me whenever I became a professional filmmaker and was able to sort of look for screenplays that I wanted to produce. I specifically sought out a teen film. I wanted to make a sort of modern day John Hughes film, or teen films, very much like the films that I grew up watching. But I wanted the film that I made to be more of a reflection of teens today. And at that point in time, I had two sons who were in high school, and, their friends were coming over here. I was taking them to all the after school activities, and, was very involved in, their school activities. And I saw what the makeup of kids look like today, which was very different from whenever I was in high school all those years ago. So I wanted this film to reflect that, and to maybe show more diverse, student population. And so I think that the film also, even though it deals with death, and I think death is sort of an interesting theme in a lot of teen films. You see so there's so many teen films out there that deal with death, right? But I'm not sure if I've seen one that's dealt with it in a humorous way, like ours has. That ultimately asks the question, who do you want to be?
Right.
And so as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, you're always looking for ways to make your film or make your story more interesting or make it better.
Mhm.
And so I felt like, I didn't want to make a, sort of a depressing, film about teen grief, and, but I also did not want to make a film that was about, just a goofy comedy,
Mhm.
that didn't really seem to have any purpose other than to, sell tickets, quite frankly. So, so I think what we found here, and what I found in Ariadne's script, what really charmed me was, not only do we have just a very complex female character who's going through something very real, but we also have and she has these relationships that are, in her, her relationships with her family and her parents and her mother in particular, just really resonates. I think that relationship really resonated with me. So I just felt, after I read the screenplay, and the story had so much heart. And as a filmmaker, that's really like the kind of films that I want to make, are films that have a really
Mhm.
big heart, at the center of them. And so I think I think that's what this film is. It's a teen film with a heart that's funny, that will make you laugh, will make you cry, and might teach you something.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
want to come back to the actual makeup of the film in just a bit, but I want to talk to you, Anna, and ask you, like, so what drew you to this project? You're a writer, you're a director, you're an actor yourself, but you also produce.
Thank you.
So
That's very generous of you.
so when you decided to come on board with this project, what was it about the story or the potential to tell a story in a certain way that excited you?
Yeah, thank you. I just want everyone to know I just act in my own films because, it's
That's the best way to do it. That way, you get cast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I learned how to produce from being an DIY kind of independent underground guerrilla. Like, I've had a lot of different, since the 90s when I started. And, in 2013, I made my own first feature film called Who's Afraid of Vagina Wolf?
Mhm.
And it was a 2-year process where I learned the nuts and bolts of making a film in Los Angeles, but also because I come from the LGBT world, and we have a lot of collaboration, camaraderie, and intersectionality. So my production and my teammates, we were all from LGBT, diverse, etc. And so many people helped me that, in fact, right afterwards, I actually started helping other friends. So far it's been exclusively female directors, and I thought that was a good thing as well, because I know how much female directors and then diverse stories, and then you keep adding it up, and it's the people that need a producer, which producers is one of the most vital and difficult click to have, especially when you're coming with very little money. So I was passionate about helping other female filmmakers, and when Jen Arnold, who's also lesbian filmmaker, told me about Michelle's project, and my universe as well is teen, aspirational, feminist undertones, friendship, etc. And I talked with Michelle and read the script, and strong mother-daughter stories. Like earlier you were talking about, Booksmart and even the 80s films. Like the 80s films is more like a slice of life fun ride, which I love as well. That's my era as well. But like today, more and more, we have this more aspirational and like, I don't want to say educational, but it is like, women where there's storytelling and there's like a lesson you learn, etc., giving you tools. And like, that's what the Never List does. I lost my grandmother 2017, she was 100. So I had a long time to enjoy her, but, here was a film that is helping you not only how you handle that in school, but how you handle that with your parents, especially your mom, and it was just great. And the whole, the team, Michelle, Ariadne was a writer that was so present and quickly, she was already, I think, a co-producer or producer. It was everything that I loved. And I think I came on board in June, and we were shooting that film by the fall.
Wow. So Ariadne, the film stars Fivel Stewart as Eva. Did you always know, was she always written as a mixed race teenager, or was that something that happened in the casting process? You found Fivel Stewart, and because that obviously then affects how her family, is composed, but it also adds like a different kind of resonance to so much of the story. When you talk about, a high achieving teen, the fact that this high achieving teen is, is mixed race, is half Asian, that reads differently, right? There are other, like there's a context there to it that's different, so how did that decision come about?
So the first version of the script had no racial markers at all. Because in a script, generally, if you don't say that the person is something other than white, then the assumption is the person is white. But that was not the way I was writing it. I just wanted it to be open. So Michelle and I's very first conversation was me saying, hey, I just want to make sure you get this. Just because I don't say that I need this to be, it's important to me that this be a diverse script. Michelle just took the ball with that and was like, let's make the main character someone not white. Let's think about who that could be. And we very quickly honed in on that main character being probably Asian. And for me, that connected to the fact that my sister-in-law is Japanese and my brother is white. And so therefore, that was a relationship that I felt like I could speak to with some authenticity because it's in my family. Because being able to be authentic was really important to me. So then we went with it. And Michelle, do you want to talk any more about that process?
Yeah, no, I think that we definitely had that conversation, and I wanted to. She was the writer, and I wanted her to to feel like I didn't want to say, hey, I want you to write, this. I just said, hey, let's look at maybe diversifying this. And instead of doing like what most filmmakers would do, which would be have the lead character white and have the supporting cast be the diversity casting, I said let's have our lead non-white. And I think even in that conversation, just through our discussion, we both sort of I felt very strongly that the lead should be Asian American. And that was just as I was reading the screenplay, that was just I just saw that, and when Ariadne mentioned that she had a sister-in-law who was Japanese American, I felt like at least she would have someone she could go to sort of discuss, vet ideas, get feedback, that kind of thing. And so it just made sense at that point in time. And I think it was the right call for sure. I think certainly, and then we also had to make the decision to have her be mixed versus having both parents being Asian American. We had mother Asian American, father Caucasian. And for me, that was very much reflection of what I was seeing with my kids, in high school, and seeing their friends who were coming over who would have mixed parents. And just for me, I thought that gave me a little added layer to work with between those parents, between their relationship, because not only are they coming from somewhat different parenting styles, they're coming from different, different cultures, different backgrounds, different they were probably raised, the parents themselves were probably raised differently. And so that, and at this point in time, their daughter's been, been the model student, the model child, and they haven't really had their parenting skills challenged. So I thought there was some interesting things that we were able to do with those parents that, we weren't trying to like be heavy handed with it, but you can kind of see it through their performances and through their, their interactions, that inherent sort of difference in their perspective on how to deal with their daughter as she was starting to rebel. That, to me, just made it more interesting, gave it more tension.
Yeah, I think, it's so wonderful to have a film like this, or films like The Half of It, that have, women of color, young women of color as the leads, because we traditionally have been shut out of, this genre. It's we can talk about representation and what it means to have people, on screen who look like you, but I think, it's undeniable that for young people, it actually does fundamentally change how they can see themselves in the world. So I found that just, wonderful. And I mean, just little touches. There's, so part of the story is that, Ava wants to learn how to become perhaps a graphic novelist, and she's so interested in art. She's got this, this woman that she looks up to, who's this famous artist, Naomi. And there's this great shot that's, in the background, I believe it's of her, it might be of the comic book store, a poster that, says like a pop art picture that says, like, does he love me just because I'm Asian? Which, over the past couple of days is such a just like timely reminder of how different people move through the world. And I think how valuable that is for a teen movie to demonstrate.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that art actually is Mari Naomi's art. She not only appeared in the film as herself, but she also allowed us to use her art. And we felt like, of course, if this is someone that she's looking up to, and that she's, whose her work is influencing, her own like development as an artist, then of course she would have her art on her walls of her room. And that I remember, I know the exact shot you're talking about. And yeah, that was certainly intentional. I mean, we didn't want the movie to be about her being Asian. We wanted it to be about her being a teenager who's going through something very, shocking and unexpected, and having to go through that whole grief process, right? But certainly her being Asian American, we certainly didn't want to ignore that either. We wanted to make sure that she was surrounded, and how she was, in her, how her room is decorated, and how the type of clothing that she, everything was very intentional in how we, the set design, costume design, the whole thing. And I think that Fivel did a really fantastic job with sort of playing the two, so that dichotomy of like good girl, bad girl, as she progressed. And but yeah, I think, I'm really, to me, having Mari Naomi especially sign on to the film, just to me gave the film all that more validation of what we were trying to say. There's lots of themes, of course, grief being a huge one, but also the theme of who do you want to be, and how are you going to, find that path for yourself,
Yeah, who are your idols, and who are
right.
you looking up to? That having that in that world is also very unusual. Something amazing in the Never list is that, so a lot of times the character is aspiring to throwing it back now to the mainstream and to somebody else that doesn't reflect them. So, and Fivel also, she is, is from a mixed parents, an Asian mom and Caucasian dad. So I think that, like, this is another thing I think is great about, like, I want to say women directed films, but like indie films or race consciousness films, is that it's collaborative, and there's things that move and evolve with each other. Like, I think representation is important for us, and the way that we check in and are able to like adapt, adjust, and do new things that bigger films, or just, more people that don't have that intention don't do, or can't do. Which is good for us as indie filmmakers to remember, we have the power to do that.
That's right.
And I was going to add to that was one of the great things about having Mari Naomi again, is because we had her whole body. This is part of the collaborative thing that Anna was just talking about, that we have her whole body of work to bring into the story as well. So so it's like we got an extra mind to come in and help us with the thoughts of what was going on with this character. And so being able to have, that's just a piece of her work that we could have on the wall. And that is one of the things that's so beautiful about working in a collaborative art, is if you bring in really talented people who are really interesting, they can bring things to levels that you never even thought of, because that's a whole nother person coming up with all more brilliant things than you could have come up with. So yeah.
Right. Well, we had
it was absolutely wonderful. Like, it just added such a dimension to the storytelling, and it happens so soon into the film that you immediately as a viewer know, like, okay, there's intention, there are deliberate choices being made, you know, by the filmmakers. And I can trust that they have their hands on the wheel, you know, and that's going to be something that, you know, is a through line through the way the character is presented on screen. So, like, Michelle, Anna, can you talk a bit about like the creative discussions you were having about how visually to represent the world of Ava, her friends, you know, because there's this wonderful mix of live action and animation in the film, but, you know, you were talking about like the set design. How did that all come together? How did you work to bring that to life?
well, you know, understanding that we're telling a story about an artist, and she, you know, but she's not a trained artist, she's just a natural artist. And I feel like when she loses her best friend, I mean, she instinctually starts dealing with that through art therapy
Mhm.
and going through, you know, drawing, and even before she even gets to the to start the never list, she's already drawing you know, images of herself and Vicky and Veronica, their alter egos. And so this is I think something that just comes very naturally to her. And so we knew we needed to incorporate the art into the storytelling. And so we have the, you know, visually we have, you know, the real world, which is, you know, predominantly her home, her high school, you know, friends' houses maybe, but she's, you know, we do have a couple of club scenes. We have what's one really cool club scene in the film, but for the most part, traditional, everyday American teen settings. You know, nothing, you know, out of the ordinary there. And you know, but with, like I said, with especially Ava's home, we did sort of throw in the sort of some Asian, you know, the art, and then some decor even in the home downstairs. Uh, and but whenever we get to the animated part, so she decides to do the never list. And so you see animated whenever after she's completed each never list item. So her best friend's died. Her way of honoring her best friend is to complete this list of things they swore they would never do, the never list. So after she completes every never list item, you see an animation showing Ava and Liz's alter egos, Vicky and Veronica, completing that never list item together.
Mhm.
So in that way, she's keeping her best friend part of the process. Even though her friend's no longer there, she's still there in her imagination, she's there in her art, she's there in her in spirit, you know. So, and that's, to me, was just a really you know, I think natural way, with her, you know, being an artist, a very natural way for us to communicate to the audience that Liz isn't gone in her life. She hasn't accepted Liz being gone in her life. And really this whole exercise in completing this list is to hang on to Liz.
Right.
And it's not until the very last never list animation that Liz actually leaves.
Mhm.
You know, she's standing there, and then you see Liz walks away, and that sort of visually tells you
Right.
that she's able to let Liz go at
Mhm.
that point. So so the animation is very much part of the storytelling and a part of her, you know, her dealing with her best friend's loss and that grief process.
Mhm. So, Anna, you mentioned, you know, you came on board and then very quickly, you know, you were on set, you were shooting for this. So can we talk about, you know, how the film actually got made, like how long the process was, you know, how you found the financing for it, what the casting process was like? Walk me through, you know, how this got made and how you were able to, you know, create great art, but, you know, on what is a small independent budget.
Yeah, well, you know, Michelle is also a producer. She's also a distributor. She has a company called Worldwide Entertainment. We're Worldwide. And so we did have some seed money. And I think, and Michelle could talk more, because actually, like what happens with a lot of projects, there is a continuous reaching out for independent financiers and, you know, people to chip in. It's interesting because Michelle was saying that recently that, and this is a thing for all filmmakers, once you just start doing it, because once you start doing it and you have something to show for it, or even if you just, once you say it's happening, you know, I've never been on a production from whatever level, you know, the Never List is under $500,000 budget, which, you know, the quality and the universe that we created is incredible. It, you know, you always are, you know, need more, and you're never 100% ready to go. But I think also, you know, with these types of budgets, it's a lot about getting a crew that is the benefit of shooting in Los Angeles. A lot of very experienced, very passionate, very committed crew, a lot easier to find than anywhere else, with the exception of maybe New York. But, you know, the Los Angeles crews are working on multi-million, you know, very, you know, great money-making shows. And so projects like ours, and that's kind of where, as a producer, I've found a lot of crossover. So we're not making a micro budget with, you know, the best we can with 10 people and not seasoned. Like, I'm trying to deliver to the filmmakers I work with the most seasoned, you know, crew. Our costume designer is Shauna Tripich, who's the costume designer of The Mandalorian, that's getting, you know, nominated left and right. And she was fantastic. She got into the visual world. Like, we met with Michelle the first day at House of Pies, and she already had like a 3-wing binder. Like, here's how we're gonna tie this in and that. And, you know, her budget was ridiculous, you know, but she made it work. And also a lot of our department heads brought on a lot of junior or like learning assistants. And so there was a lot of opportunity on the Never List, and then my last film, also the Wild Nights with Emily, that I produced as well. A lot of bringing on younger people, or whatever the age, just a lot of people actually even switching positions. You know, as a producer, I brought on someone who's normally an office PA. She became the production coordinator. First she became the APOC, and then she's really good, and she moved up to production coordinator. These are important credits that you can use as well in exchange for, like, I can't pay you $500 a day, but I can pay you this much. This will be your credit. This is also the collaborators you're going to be working with, which is its own, you know, learning experience. Michelle already had, you know, several feature films and experience, and also knows the follow through of like how distribution works and things like that. So it's also a project for anyone, you know, who's working on films these days. It's like, you know, who are you working with? But also, like, is the film gonna for sure be finished? Right. Is it gonna for sure be seen? Are the filmmakers committed to make that film happen, you know? And that's exactly what we had here at the Never List. So it became a learning experience. We wanted to shoot it, you know, at first we debated between New York, Texas, and LA, because Michelle's has shot there and she has a lot of crew. She brought some key crew from Texas. We found a lot of crew there. We found hustled, you know, another thing in LA, like locations, which are normally expensive endeavors. We found a lot of great deals. You know, we did a lot of talking, a lot of door knocking. So it's, you know, a lot of great deals with the rental houses. And I think today more than ever, these last 2 years, you know, we shot our film 3 years ago, or yeah, 2.5, 3 years ago, is that now everybody officially, finally, exponentially wants to support women, diverse company. So if you're making a film where you can say, like we could, you know, we had above the line, we were 80% women, you know, female identified. We had, you know, I'm looking at my 60%, you know, above and below the line, you know, we had 31% LGBT. So you, and you're in a production house is like, we're going to give you 50%, 60%, like ask for the moon, you know, and maybe you get a meteor that's gonna say a comet, and you know.
I love that. I mean, so Ariadne, you write this great script And, as a writer, you don't know where, your project is going to end up. You don't know. I mean, you pray for it to be bought. You pray that it's going to, eventually see the light of day, but you don't know who's going to be helping to birth, this project. So you end up with these great women, helping to bring this project to light. I want to, talk to all of you about, like, what was it like on set? How did you find the people, that you were working with? Because, as you say, Anna and Michelle, as I know your company is committed to, you're all about telling, female-led stories. You're all about these numbers, like actually putting your money where your mouth is. So where are you finding the folks that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I for me, it's, that those circles. I mean, my career started in Paris, and I was there for 16 years, and I moved to LA 10 years ago. But at 39 years old, the French system of making film and documentary is completely different. So I actually said, you know what, I'm going to start as a PA. And while I'm working on my films, and, I had several things on television, French television, but I started as a PA and then started learning how things worked, and also started meeting people, started understanding, like, what is a best boy really? Because I didn't really know. And that was always a joke, but it was really like, who are they? What do they do? And each job you do, I think there's more. I always saw value more than just the financial, like, what's my paycheck, which a lot of people in LA were getting caught up in paychecks as well. It was, what can I do? And as a PA, for example, you do have a lot of work, but you don't have as much responsibility and concentration focus as the DP or the sound. So you can actually start getting to know people, and every single person you meet, if you like them, if you vibe them, if they have, share your values, it's a good person to keep in contact with. Because, like I said earlier, people are looking for good people and good projects to work with. And so, but also, I always put up notices on WIMPs, Women in which is on Facebook. Now on Facebook, there's a lot, but, Women in Film has a great Facebook page to post.
I know.
Shout out. And there's Women in Film, LA, New York, global, so it's resourceful. There's Women, WOMXN, in film. That's, and there's a lot of, it's women and gender, non-conforming, crew and directors. Brown Girl Doc Mafia. I mean, Brown Girls Doc Mafia, they're amazing. It's documentary. They're, really just put women, film, female, and Facebook, and you'll start getting a lot. And then Facebook posting, and you will get a lot of response. And a lot of vetting.
Right. One of the things you're pointing to is, if you are looking for these people, you can find them. The excuse that they are not out there, that these talented, creative, experienced people are not out there, is simply false. Like, we are
LinkedIn is amazing. Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, that was a big perk of shooting in LA as well, because I knew that we would very likely be able to find a predominantly female crew base there. And I mean, not to say that they aren't in other cities, but I knew for sure LA would be able to, that there would be enough crew there to for our production. Because when I first talked to Anna, I said, I want as many female crew members on this film as possible. Not to discriminate or anything, but just because we wanted to, like, give them an opportunity that they are not being given on other films. And I wanted our film to be the exception, not the rule, right? And so they're being discriminated against in other projects, right? They're not going to be discriminated against on mine. In fact, we want women to apply, and we want to consider them. And as a result, we had close to 70% women or women identifying behind the camera. And so that was really important to us. And it really did affect our set. It made our set, to me anyway, oddly just, a nurturing place for me to be creatively, if that makes sense. I mean, it really did. I really enjoyed walking on the set every single morning and talking to people and having a moment with them, chit-chatting before, we got into the, filming, and it just was a very pleasant, I felt like, atmosphere. And I understand my responsibility as a director of, making sure that there's a certain tone and a certain, lack of toxicity and a lack of, ego, and like the director and the producer are the ones who set that tone, right? And I think Anna and I both did I think a really good job of making everybody feel like they could be, there was no egos, there was no toxicity, no yelling, none of that stuff. It was just trying to, although I think yell one time, but but not too bad. It wasn't like crazy yelling. But
Turtles! Don't pass turtles!
Our turtles! No, it was, but generally speaking, I try to keep the set light and, to where people felt comfortable being, especially actors, feeling like they could just, be comfortable in their surroundings by the people working for them, and understanding that we had their best interests at heart, as well as, the story, and that they could be they could take chances, and they could be as creative as possible. And there was no way of I tell my actors all the time, there's no way to do it wrong. It's like, it's just a choice. And if I think we could try a different choice, then we'll try a different choice, but don't think of it as being the wrong choice. It's be creative. And so I like that sort of collaborative style of filmmaking, where it's very much, we're all coming with our talents, and we're working together to tell the story and to make something good, that people will want to watch, and that will speak to them. So that's the goal, right?
Yeah. Ariadne, you look like you're ready to say something.
Yeah. It's funny because what you said about how as a writer, you don't get to pick in quite the same way as a producer, as a director does. You're not getting that many offers. And what was amazing was, so Michelle found me actually on Inktip. So truly out of nowhere. We knew no one in common. We knew, and on the very first conversation, I mean, one thing I would say is that, kind of speaking to what Anna said, speaking to your values opens up the conversation to finding people who share your values. So even though I was a nobody and Michelle was the only director interested in my script, in our first conversation, I was like, I just want to make sure you understand that diversity is important to me, and that even though it's not super clear in the script, that's key. And Michelle was like, I'm right there. And so when you open up about your own needs and your own values, I think it helps bring people to you. But then I actually got so lucky, because these two let me be on set every day. And what writer gets to be on set? That's awesome. So I got to be a co-producer.
We didn't let the writer on set, we let the co-producer on set.
Yeah.
And,
we let both.
I believe the chemistry teacher.
And also the chemistry teacher. We let the chemistry teacher on set, but we said, no, you can't come on set.
Right.
And that crucial scene up with the pop brownies,
That was
some work was being done in that scene.
Oh yes, we had.
I was gonna say something, because I never hear people talk about this, and it's true that our film, the most of the time they try to keep this writer off the set, like 99.999% time. But I think, and it's good for people to think about this, is that it was actually such a plus, because there's so many moments that as a producer, it's like, we don't have time, the sun's running out, the clouds came in, we're trying these things in the earlier part of the day. And to have, instead of, actors are really good and they incarnate their roles, but sometimes actors are also like, I have to come up with this, and a screenwriter isn't, there's their story, they're seeing it evolve, they're recalculating the universe. And I think that it's like everything else in filmmaking, the old, quote, male, or maybe the old screenwriters were a pain in the ass, and maybe they were like ego about their script, and then the director was ego about directing, and then, and meanwhile, but I think that we're in a new, era, and like, I think it's a real plus if you have these shared values with like the screenwriter, and it's amazing. I write and direct. I've never, sold a script, but like, I would be like, it would behoove you to have me on the script, because I could really ask me anything about them, or ask if you're torn between some colors, or what game would she like? I don't know, so it's good to ask also to be on and to ask, can the screenwriter come by, or, new ideas, a new generation of filmmaking.
Yeah, I think, this is a difference between TV and features, right? That it is uncommon for the writer of a feature to be on set. And one of the things we here at Women in Film want to emphasize is that we're not just trying to, get women jobs in the old industry. We want to disrupt the industry. We want more of this. We want more of this kind of collaborative atmosphere. We want more department heads bringing on junior people, exposing, more women, more people of color, like we want all of that happening. We want to reshape and remake the industry into what it can be, because this just sounds like a wonderful production to have been a part of. I can't imagine, going from this to then, some sort of old school step with, some like chest beating dude trying to run like a fiefdom. So, okay, I have several more questions, but I do want to make space for audience questions. So I'm going to try and do some of those right now. So I think this applies to all of you, because you have all been writers. Two of you have directed, have also produced, but Catherine is asking about the difference between writing and creating a project for a teen / young adult audience versus adult audiences. And, that's for any of you, because as I said, you've all got experience working in multiple genres.
Yeah, I would just say that, it depends what kind of teen story. It depends actually what kind of teen or adult story. Like I've just watched Nomadland, that is amazing. And there's something, there's entertainment, which I love, there's nothing wrong with anything I'm about to say, but, it's like there's entertainment, but you could do, education through comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how you want to aspire. Like, do you want to, diverge and have entertainment and do hard, but I think like we're in the 21st century, and I think more and more both adult and teen creators are trying to bring something new, because we do learn from TV and film. Mm-hmm. Like we talk a lot about I want to see myself, but we need to talk more about how we replicate how that feels normal, of how to handle a situation by ghosting, or by, you keep seeing the same reaction over and over in 10 different films and TV series. Mm-hmm. You're like, that's how people react, and I think that's a lot. So for me, that's the thing. Like I have a teen film that I'm developing, that's Issa Rae is producing, and we're hopefully shooting in the fall. And it's a rated PG, it's almost rated G, but it's a smart film for girls where they compete, but it's not for a boy at the end. There's no boy in sight in the film. It's really like two gifted girls, and they're, because we don't have any. It always has to be about the boy, or other TV series now is about sex and drugs and, and problems and when are you gonna have sex? Like even the half-hour teen comedies, it's mm-hmm. about when are we gonna have sex and with whom. So for me, like I'm like, there's enough of that. What I want is like for the geeks, and for the and not even the geeks, just like the, there's a lot of other stuff going on in high school and teen years. Mother-daughter relationships. I love it. You cannot, honor thy mother. Anyways,
yeah. What I thought we did, at least I tried to do in this film, was, very much, sort of a throwback to some of these, 80s, teen tropes, and stereotypes, the jock, the smart girl, the, mm-hmm. The misunderstood rebel boy, the, the party girl, all of these sort of characters that we've seen before. Like there's nothing new about these characters. They're very much, sort of traditional, cliche kind of teen movie characters. But through the process of this story, you start to find out they're not exactly, that we sort of show the stereotype, but then we sort of upend the stereotype, and we delve a little deeper behind what's really going on with with these characters. So the jock in the film isn't really, he's kind of a bully, kind of like, at first, but then you realize there's a lot more going on with him than anybody knows. And the same with Ava, and the same with, Taylor, and all the characters. You find out that they're not stereotypes, that they are fully fledged people. They're young, and they're going through experiences, many experiences for the first time, and not really knowing how to navigate those experiences and deal with them, sometimes in the most healthy of ways. And ultimately, they learn something about themselves, right? And in the end, they decide, okay, I don't want to be the stereotype. I want to be an individual. I want to be who I feel like I want to be in this world. And hopefully that comes across, through this story of this girl dealing with her grief of her best friend's loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the only thing I'd add, is that is to own the complexity of the teenage years. I think it's very easy to oversimplify your own teenage years, but if you really sit back into it and think about what everybody else was going through and what you were going through, and the difference between who you thought you were supposed to be and who you actually were. So I think the only thing that I would say about writing a teenage movie is to not think about it so much as a teenage movie as just a movie about people who happen to be young, that are going through all sorts of complex levels that they're not necessarily given credit for by the outside world.
Yeah, but in a language that feels real and feels very authentic. I think it's very easy sometimes to conflate like film that is made about teens versus films that are made for teens. And so, sometimes you'll watch something and it's ostensibly about people in high school, but they look a smooth 35. And you're like, okay, these people look like they're about to get a 401k, It just doesn't ring true. But there was so much about your film where it is delightful to watch young people be young and be joyous and be confused and make terrible decisions, but also have such good hearts. I was really struck by a couple of scenes with Ava and Taylor in particular. Taylor, amazing, Fivel, amazing.
Anna Barto.
Yeah, so good. There's a scene, in the club where, Ava is very clear she's not going to leave Taylor alone, even though Taylor has left her. And I just think, what an important shot, a small shot, but how important to see this girl just not leaving her friend. It would have been so easy to dismiss Taylor as like the bad girl, and anything that happens to her is her own fault, but the film doesn't do that. And then Ava gets Taylor home, and, she's offered a ride, and, she's like, no, I can walk, but he insists that she get a ride too. And I was just like, I mean, maybe it's, the old person in me, but I was like, get in the car, okay? You do not want to be walking. Just these small things that felt so real, but I just thought, this is so great, for teenagers to see just these kind of behaviors naturalized. Okay, I said I was going to pivot to audience questions, and then I started talking again. So we've got a question from Haisa, who says, although representation for women has improved, there's still much to be desired. What kinds of stories are you hoping to tell moving forward? And that's a question for all of you.
I'm just I'm a history buff. I love stories about women throughout history who've made impacts that we just haven't heard, right? So I'm interested in maybe going back and telling stories about women throughout history who've done, who were sort of the unsung heroes, that the history books forgot. To me, that's fascinating. Like, the women who were, a part of, World War II, who helped us, win, World War II. I mean, some of the things that they did was just mind blowing, and, I'm just a big history buff. So I just think that that would be really cool to explore some of these historical heroines that, that the history books forgot.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Ariadne, Anna, go ahead.
The film that I just spoke about is called The Papaya Factory, and it's a coming of age of a 14-year-old Cuban American in Miami in 1984, which is when I turned 15. It's an autofiction. It's not an autobiographical, but it's important for me to like kind of now to be specific. It's been 15 years. I'm trying to make this movie, so I'm finally but it's always been important for me to like have it set in Miami, to be Cuban American, and even our challenge is like casting Cuban American. And we're really at the point finally that there isn't enough, you know, it might not be 100% Cuban American actors, but you know, we have so much more choice there. And again, that it's about, you know, girls that want to compete, but that it's about winning. It's about making all those mistakes for your own self and more than anything else. But then I'm also hired to direct a film that I'm shooting in this summer, and it's called Claire at 16. And this is a teen girl serial killer film.
Okay, I'm on board.
It's adapted from a book. And when I came in and I got the job, and then I said, this needs a major rewrite, because it was men, all, from the writer to the adapter to the, you know. And so I introduced him to Guinevere Turner, who's one of my good friends, and she wrote American Psycho, The L Word. She's in my first film, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. She got the gig, and the way I had pitched it, it's a 21st century neo-feminist noir dark comedy. And I said, it's going to be cathartic for women and a warning for bad men. And I'm so happy, and always encourage everyone to see Promising Young Woman, because it's kind of in that world of pop culture. It's going to be PG-13. You know, I found a lot of ways to, but anyways, and so the thing is, though, that she is going to kill, and her mission, what she has before is that, you know, she is a serial killer, but now it's how she's gonna do it, and you know, she's trying to slay responsibly. So it's kind of, for me, exciting to have a film where, yeah, there are women out there. It's kind of like Thelma and Louise, how I felt when I was 21 and saw that movie. It's like, yeah, there are women out there who can kick your ass, you know, and more. So I think it's good. A little fear, a little balance of power, a little cathartic. You know.
I'm gonna see that movie 6 times.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic.
Ariadne, what about you?
Oh, so I've got a project. One of the interesting things that I find in going back into history or going into stories is finding the women in the story that maybe wouldn't necessarily be brought out to be told a story about. So I'm telling a story, the script I'm working on now is about this terrible environmental tragedy that happened in the small town of Montana where I was born. And normally, luckily, there's this great, in actual life, there's this wonderful female, this incredible woman who fought to get attention and to get the town cleaned up. But she needs an antagonist, and the normal person to make the antagonist would be one of the slew of men that were in charge of the company. But I wasn't that interested in that. I feel like I've seen that before. And so I decided to instead make the antagonist another woman from the town who was the executive secretary to the guy who ran. So who was complicit and who was a promoter of the company, who was not in charge, but not doing anything to help. And to make this a challenge between these two women, and it's a battle between these two really strong women who see themselves very much as supporters of their town. In fact, it's called The Good People of Lincoln County, about what it is to be a good person. So I think that's one of the interesting challenges, is because so much of history has put us into a supporting role. Who's interesting, who's maybe a little bit more behind the scenes, or who isn't right up front. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in right now.
I'm so excited for everything that, you know, that all of y'all have. We're gonna wrap it up here, but before we do, I want to ask, how can people view the Never List?
Lots of ways.
Lots of ways. Let's see. I've got to pull up the website here because I can't remember them all. There's quite a few. It's so
neverlistmovie.com.
Yeah, if you go to neverlistmovie.com, then it'll show all the various platforms where you can find it right now. But it's on Prime, you know, on video, Amazon Prime. It's on Google Play, YouTube, Microsoft, Fandango now. You can get it on demand on Xfinity. Hulu, Dish, the whole, if you go to Netflix, if you go to, to Neverlist movie.com, and it'll have all the various platforms with links to where they can find it.
I encourage all of you watching, whether you're watching us here in Zoom or watching us on Facebook, please check out the film. You will not regret a single minute of the hour and 40 minutes that you spend with Ava. And I'm telling you, the scene with the pop brownies is gonna,
The
you're
scene
gonna
where
lose
they're
your
making
mind.
them, or the scene where the reaction?
With the teachers, the
yeah.
sequence of the teachers reacting, you're gonna lose your mind. So great. Thank you
The
all.
original rough cut was like 10 minutes. It was just something that we would laugh and laugh and laugh. And it was like,
It
okay.
was, in addition to Ariadne's chemistry teacher, the one that got me honestly was Jude Droege with his deadpan, just not moving.
He's
So
amazing.
He's so good.
Yeah,
So good.
his whole school may be burning down, but he's sitting in his office.
He's
He
chilling.
was very touching. He was touching. He's a great actor. I've worked with him many times.
Oh, yeah. Our supporting cast in this film, I mean, we talk about the lead cast, but our like our teacher, of course, Jonathan Bennett, who y'all know from Mean Girl, but then also Susan Ziegler, who Anna had worked with on Wild Nights with Emily, is hilarious. I mean, there's this one, I know we got to finish, but there's this one scene where, that one scene in particular where the pop brownie scene, she's she's an English teacher, and I said, well, just, how do you know Macbeth? I mean, what do you know about Macbeth? Just start ripping on Macbeth, improvise a little bit. She's like, oh, I just finished a production of Macbeth. I'm like, girl, you go, Lady Macbeth. I want to see Lady Macbeth. Let's do it. She just went off. It was great.
So good. The math teacher, the numbers. Listen, I'm telling you, go see out this film. It is not hard to find. You will love it. Thank you all so much for being here and for sharing, your experiences with the writing, the directing, producing of this film. We were so happy to have you. So happy also that you were a recipient of the ReFrame Stamp, which we give to productions that are gender balanced. We really, appreciate your seeking that out and, promoting it and, talking about how important it is. If you want to learn more about ReFrame, which is an initiative by Women in Film and the Sundance Institute, you can go to reframeproject.org to learn more about it and to see the other films that have gotten the stamp. But on this note, I just want to say again, thank you all so much. Thanks to the audience watching us here and on Facebook. We have loved having you, and good luck with everything you have coming up. I can't wait to see the good people of Lincoln County. I can't wait to see this Claire at 16. So good. I cannot wait for this. And Michelle, I'll be sending you a script of mine for a Forgotten Woman from History. So this is how it happens. Women in Film.
Ebony, thank you. You were amazing. Thank you so much.
This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you all so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.